So when the war broke out, I spent a lot of time thinking about like what is Putin's off ramp, and I've never actually been able to come to it because every time that he did something else, he made an off ramp even more difficult. In recent days, I'm coming to conclude that Putin is not actually in charge or not in control. Like we pointed Putin as like he's the guy that can say no, stop doing this or whatever, and that is true in one sense. But in another regard, he's in a very dangerous position, and he can't actually get out of it. It's like he's got this dangerous animal by the tail, and if he lets go, that's trouble, and he can't really hang on. So he's in a real bind. So I want to make my case by showing you some of what I have been reading and listening to and digesting and that kind of thing. So the first one is this. I very often will tune into Inside Russia. Now, this is a Russian citizen. He has recently left Russia during the mobilization. So he's in Turkestan or something like that, just below Kazakhstan. And he's been a wealth of insight and information. And the way that he frames it, reframed it for me. I'm only going to show about a minute of his hour plus, and then you'll get a sense of what I'm talking about, because I think this is where Putin is. So here we go.
Zugzwang in German means compulsion to move.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you play chess, you know what Zugzwang is. It is a situation where no matter what kind of move you make, you will be in a position worse than now.
Now, think about that in regard to Putin. What can he actually do? The Crimean bridge, the Kerch bridge, was just hit with an explosion. He's got to do something. He can't not do anything. Not doing something is going to put him in a worse position. Doing something is probably going to put him in a worse position. He can go nuclear. That's going to put him in a very worse position. He can go and rain down missiles, and that's going to eventually backfire, as it is backfiring. He could send more soldiers, but he doesn't have the soldiers. So if he just tries to tell them all to charge, that puts him in a worse position. I think he's nailed it. I think this is what it is.
Zugzwang is a very, very bad place to be when you play chess. It usually leads to not good outcome.
That's right.
And it is easy to say that Zugzwang is a trap, and Russia isn't Zugzwang. Russia is trapped.
Now, that's what he said. Russia is trapped. And I think that's right. I don't know. Like I did the calculations, the mathematical calculations. You need more than 160,000 troops just to occupy those 4 oblasts that you annexed. And so you need, let alone any hot war, any actual fighting, just to hold the occupation. And that's assuming that they're not really fighting back. That's just to tamp things down. So I don't know that Putin can actually hold on. Now, what do you say? Zugzwang? Zugzwang is German, is found in chess and other turn-based games where one player is put in a disadvantage because of their obligation to make a move. Now, this is game theory, right? He gets to move, Ukraine gets to move. He gets to move, Ukraine gets to move. That's he can't just dictate the terms of what Ukraine's going to do, and that's the problem for him. If he could, he would have just dictated that Ukrainian government goes away and that Zelensky flees. But when Zelensky took a stand, it changed everything. Okay, it's when any legal move will worsen their position, and that's where Putin is. We think of Putin as this big, like, he's Putin, he can make all these decisions. His hands are tied. He's in a bind, and we're just starting to see that. Okay, let me move to this other video. I was watching a really interesting interview in the in Times Radio with the former speechwriter for Putin. So he has some insight into how Putin rolls. Let's hear him.
Well, definitely he was no longer as strong as it was before. He was no longer controlling the Russian elites as he was doing it before the war. Now, I would say that like almost 100% of the Russian elites, they understand that their interests and the interests of Vladimir Putin, they no longer coincide. You know, previously those things were coming together, and since the beginning of the war, their paths separated, and now
Now that's really interesting because Putin's power base had come from his oligarchs. So he has, say, about 110 oligarchs that own 35% of the wealth in Russia, and he kind of made them. He had read Putin's Kleptocracy if you want a good book about this. He made these people, and then that's his support base. But now their interests are diverging radically as the war goes on. That's what he's saying. So Putin is in some danger from that now, but it gets worse for Putin.
They're running in the totally opposite direction. And he's losing control of the events. And in many cases, he's being pressured into doing something he doesn't want to do this. Actually,
no, so he's losing control of events. So we think of him as the force behind things, but he's actually being pushed by others. He's losing control of events, and he's being pressured by the hardliners. Listen,
him personally, I'm sure he wants to negotiate that. And actually, he told about this more than once. He wants to end this war. He understands that he would not be able to win it, and he wants to stop it, but he can't afford doing this because in this case he's afraid he would lose credibility, he would lose legitimacy.
Okay, did you hear that? So he would lose credibility if he just stopped the war because of it. So for him, if you understand Putin's politics, then this makes a lot of sense. It's not because he's a nice guy. It's not because he has a solid moral compass, which is causing him to think, I should love my neighbor. It's not that. It's because of his political base.
He would lose the remaining base of support. His base of support is already shrinking, and he is afraid that he would lose the remaining ones, so to say. Right. He would not get back the liberals, the opposition, and he would lose those so-called nationalist patriots. And so he is not so much leading now as he is being led.
Did you hear that? He's not so much leading now as being led. This is disastrous for Putin. He is completely out of control. He is the one that gets to decide, but his decisions are so constrained. It's what we were just talking about in chess, that any move is a bad move for him. And I think that's accurate.
By the logic of the events.
Right. So under pressure from the liberals, but also from the hardliners as well. Now, is it possible?
Look, I'm sorry, it's a very important point. I want you to understand about those hardliners. Yeah. Those hardliners are the people that offer no solution to the problem. They know what they are against. They are against the end of the war. They are against what these pigeons suggesting or doves are suggesting. Yes, they are against this. But if you ask them, what do you suggest? Well, they cannot answer this question. Well, we are to continue the war till we win.
So the people pushing Putin just want him to continue the war. They have no strategy to get out. And I don't think Putin has a strategy to get out either. But again, part of this comes down to his leadership, because in the very beginning, he was kind of browbeating them into taking his position. And they, were reluctantly going, yes, we agree with you. Watch that video. It's very creepy. A couple days before the war, where he calls his cabinet together, and then he's like, so what is your assessment? What is your assessment? What is your assessment? And the one person who was like a little bit on the edge, he's like, no, speak up. Tell us the truth. Tell us what you really think. And he was like browbeating him into it. Dictators create their own holes when they do this kind of thing, and Putin is so deep in it right now, he can't stop digging. I think that's accurate. Now, let's also frame this and understand this in light of what just happened with the UN. The United Nations just voted yesterday. UN General Assembly demands Russia reverse course on attempted illegal annexation. To oppose the illegal annexation, 143 nations in favor, only 5 were against it, and 35 abstentions. So this is a pretty overwhelming sense of the world, taking the pulse of, was that election actually legitimate? And who said that it was legitimate? Belarus, North Korea, Russia, Nicaragua, and Syria. Putin is in a hole. He can't climb out of this. I don't know what the off ramp is. I don't think that he knows what the off ramp is, but he's not in control anymore. He's not in charge. Like, he's in control. He could say it, but he can't say it, because to say it would be his certain political and maybe his physical demise. It would be very bad for him. So that's what I want you to understand about where Putin is. This is a very hopeful thing in one sense, because it's not like he's this huge hulking kind of, oh, I'm going to get you. No, what he's doing are signs of desperation, sending the missiles down as he has upon children's playgrounds. It's just, that's nonsense. This is not what strong people do. This is what weak people do, and he's in a weak position. All right, thank you for your time. I hope that helps you understand what's going on the ground in Ukraine.